All right, guys, we are just ready to make our first pull with the new combo. This will be the new S366 turbos. We're going to be running on 12.5, 13 pounds, just like before. Not changing anything in the tune whatsoever. Just swap the turbos and making a pull on the dyno without changing anything else. So let's see what it does. That's the kind of games we like to see. If you guys don't remember, it did 600 on my best previously, so we'll see. We'll go over the data here in a second. Alright guys, we'll go ahead and take a look at this footage here, or the data. Alright, so the teal line is my previous best with the VS Racing S366s. 66, 67 VS Racing turbos, and the yellow line is now with the Borg-Warner turbos, or the forced inductions turbos. They are TDI China copies, actually. Well, I would say China copies. They're half US, half China. The exhaust housing is actual Borg-Warner, but the intake housing is cast, and the center section is cast in China, and they're really good turbos. Jose hooked me up with them, and shout out to him. They are working awesome. So as we can see here, that's probably the biggest area where it gained, from 574 to 643. That's a pretty significant jump in power, and you can see between the two lines, the yellow and the teal, how it changes as the RPM goes through the run. That is pretty awesome. Looking back at the computer, you can see here at that same RPM where it was making that big difference in power, still 12.6 degrees, or 12.6 psi boost. Ignition timing is 23.9. It's the same timing map I was using before. Intake air temps were at 93. So the intake air temps are running lower because it is cooler out today. So you can contribute a little bit of power to that, maybe 10 horsepower or something like that. But again, we're looking at 574 to 643. That's, 80 horse. I can't calculate that fast in my head. But yeah. So we're gonna make a 20 psi pull. We're gonna see what them puppies do up there. Alright guys, before we make this video on 20 pounds of boost, I don't have a reference with this particular torque converter, so I'm going to get it focused here. Come on, there we go. I don't have this particular a 20 psi pull with this converter and the other turbos, but I do have a 24, so what we're going to do is compare the 24 with the 20, and if we're making less, then we might turn it up to 24 yet. But yeah, it peaked at 6,200. The horsepower was, I guess my cursor's right in the way again, isn't it? Looks like 837 on 24 pounds of boost. So we're gonna go ahead and try and see if we can do better than that. that does that. Oh man, I'm so excited. So we picked up from 837 to 881. So we will do a analyze this run and we'll see what we got. All right, guys, I got done doing some pulls, and I gotta say, I'm pretty happy. It gained more on 12 PSI than it did on the 24, and it makes sense because I don't think the turbos were necessarily the limiting factor. The turbos were more or less a design. The design of the turbo changes the power band. So I believe that's the main reason we picked up power with these turbos, not necessarily flow. Flow definitely helped, but it's not the main contributing factor, in my opinion. Let's go over a little bit of data on the 24 pounds and we'll discuss that a little bit. All right, so here we can see the 24 PSI pull, which was actually pretty good. Our peak horsepower was about right there. It's kind of hard to do with one hand here while holding the camera, but as you can see, we picked up around 40 horsepower, which is good. Peak to peak, as far as the rest of the curve. But what you'll notice is down here is where we're gaining a lot. This is around the 5,500 RPM range. And I think the biggest reason is the design of these turbos. They're making a lot better power under the curve. But the converter was also kind of flashing at this point, so I don't know if that's really good data. I know from 6,000 up, that is really good data. And so you can definitely see we have a little bit less gains here than we were having on the lower boost levels, which I think on the lower boost level, we were picking up closer to 50 horsepower. So it's not a big difference. But either way, I'm really happy with this, guys. And here's the other thing. For some reason, these two runs back to back weren't reading the same RPM on this DYNO graph. As you can see, the green line, 68, 68 under RPM and 67.93. So we're off, you know, about a 70, 80 RPM between the two runs, because the way this dyno does it, it goes by speed and not by RPM. So because of the extra power, it was kind of flashing it at a different RPM, I guess. I'm not entirely sure why those two aren't working to read them back to back, but that's what it's doing. Anyway, we'll go over to the computer a little bit. All right, so as you can see, we were 24.4 PSI. Over here was 24.4. And you can see it's kind of overlaying the blue line. So we're up about a quarter of a PSI, because I believe it was 24.2 was what it was doing previously to 22.9. So we're seeing a tiny little bit more boost. So some of the gains is going to be through that as well. But it's minuscule, that amount of boost. I mean, that would do maybe 10 horsepower at the max, but I don't even think that, because at 24 pounds, I don't think that this engine is doing more than 10 or 15 horsepower per pound of boost. So a quarter of a PSI of boost is going to be not even 5 horsepower. I gotta say, I'm pretty happy with the results. I honestly didn't expect to pick up any power, to be quite honest. I was thinking that it would have a little bit more power, but it actually exceeded my expectations. I figured it would probably pick up more underneath the curve, which it did for sure. And from there up, it picked up a little bit of power, which I'm really happy with. But I can tell these are gonna spool significantly slower, so we're gonna see how that's gonna work out. Hopefully I can still leave with all the boost that I want, but we shall see. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it when you guys subscribe, when you like and stuff like that. It means a lot to me. It shows me that there's people out there interested in the stuff that I do. And again, it's not that I'm doing stuff the best way you can. I'm learning as I go. You guys are learning with me, hopefully, and I really enjoy doing that. So if you guys have any ideas or things that you want me to try or do, let me know in the comments. And thank you again for watching. Have a good one.